Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Photo Mishmash. This one being broadcast live June 17th, 2020. I am excited to talk about the Photoshop and Lightroom updates. And although Topaz Denoise doesn't have an update, it does have some revolutionary noise reduction that I've been playing with over the last couple of days and I want to talk about. And I brought along, as usual, and I'm so happy to welcome to the show, my good friends, Steve Scurich and David Carr. Steve, how are you doing?
I'm great. It's great to be here and excited for today's show. We have a lot to cover off on, a lot of cool news and stuff that we've all been kind of playing with for the week.
That's right. And we forgot to talk about this last show, but we're going to tease that you've got a pretty big purchase sitting on your desk. We'll be talking about a little bit later in the show.
Oh, yes.
Oh, he spoiled it. There you go.
Well, I don't know.
Don't you know how this clickbaity stuff works, Steve? And David Carr, thanks for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Once again, got here just in the nick of time. My hair is still wet from the shower, so. But this time I was working out at the gym this time, so that was, you know.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Like, did you go to a gym or your gym in your house?
I went to a gym. I don't have a gym in my house. Yeah. I went to a gym. It's very sparse. There aren't a lot of people. Everybody's doing the social distancing thing very well. So I'm pretty proud of my fellow Atlantans.
Nice. Yeah, you know, it's just interesting to see pictures as friends post. I've got friends that are on vacation that live in Georgia, and I think they went to the Outer Banks or somewhere like that. And just to see people, like groups of people that aren't family with their arms around each other in pictures, it's just a little weird.
That is weird. I mean, it's definitely Georgia is definitely way more opened up than a lot of other states. We haven't been at least listed as one of the states where coronavirus is kind of on the rise again, you know, because it's kind of starting to spike in some other states, which is scary. It's not like Georgia has some protective shield that prevents that. So it could happen. So I think people still need to just hunker down and be careful.
Yeah. Tanya is pointing out, rightly so, that somehow I didn't get the memo either on the black shirt or the photography logo business shirt. I feel a little left out, guys. You clearly went behind my back here, and I'm just never going to have you back on the show.
Did you get that memo?
For Tanya, I let her know that apparently you own some small unknown company called Arc'teryx. I don't know how you pronounce it.
That's right.
It's a weird logo and an even weirder name. So good luck with that company.
Oh, here's how it went down. They saw me wearing a jacket and they're like, that guy looks so good in our jacket. We should just give him the whole multi-million-dollar company.
That's wonderful.
They saw the hair. They saw the hair and they're like, that guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
That story.
Really fitting our brand now.
That's some power hair up there.
It's all right, man.
How's the party in the back looking? Is it?
No. It's I haven't looked, but when I wash, I can feel that it's quite long and raggedy, very raggedy.
I just am imagining you like turning sideways like that in this huge like braided rat tail.
Yeah. You kind of look like Teen Wolf back there, actually.
Wolf. I don't think I've had it that long in the back since 10th grade. When girlfriend was like, "That looks horrible. Cut your hair."
Well, everything's calm and quiet in Seattle, so you should be just fine to go out and go wherever you want.
Yeah, exactly.
Things are actually quite calm and quiet, but our hair cutter places are not open.
Okay. Well,
soon, maybe. Soon. Yeah. It's okay though. I'm just gonna sit here and pet my little camera. This did arrive. I don't have anything to say about it right now because it arrived last night. This is the Sony vlogging camera, the first Sony to have that fully flip out screen right there. So handy dandy.
You know, I can make any flip out screen fully flip out. It just won't work. I'm able to do that with any camera.
Yeah, some cameras work better than others. 20% of the time it works fine.
Yeah, exactly.
I did have the photo memory from yesterday. It was 4 years ago today that my GH4 got dropped by my assistant and totally shattered that flip out screen.
Oh.
And I just remember that because, well, the photo was shown to me, but also when I sent it into Panasonic, the description on the repair was, "This camera has been abused." That was the language they used. I felt so bad.
Yeah, well, apparently it happens enough that they needed to make a drop-down item for that.
Apparently enough. Yeah. All right, let's move on to a quick recap of stuff that's been going on lately. David Carr, I saw you posted yesterday. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. A new How I Edit video.
Yeah, I finally released the one that I started recording over 2 weeks ago. Finally finished editing it. It's the wedding ring shot that I talked about on the last or 2 episodes ago. And then I actually recorded another one this morning, and I just released it right before we went live. So it's like a 2-for-1 special.
Ooh.
Yeah. So
Nice.
and they're more brief than usual. So I'm trying to tidy that up a little bit. But what I'm finding is when I go to do these, a lot of times I end up doing most of a take and then stopping and going, that's terrible. That sucks. Like, I don't even know what I'm saying, or I'm going on some rabbit trail of an edit that's just not working. And so I want to show that I have some command of what I'm doing. So I go back and start over.
Nice. Yeah, I understand. I did notice that the ring edit was definitely on the shorter side, 17 minutes.
Yes.
So
yes.
Encourage folks to go watch that. I just updated the show notes. I'd forgotten to do that. So that is linked right down below this video. And of course, David's YouTube channel is linked down there as well. So you can go take a look at that. And sorry, what was the one that went out just before the show? What was the content?
Okay. So this is one that it's a pier that a pier in St. Augustine, Florida, that I photographed over 5 years ago. It's one of the first photographs I've ever taken that I was like, whoa, wow, I took that, and it was one of those happy accident shots where I didn't really know what I was doing, but I had a tripod and an ND filter, and it was midday. It's the worst time of day to take a photo like this, but it just worked. And so I kind of go through and re-edit and kind of show you my thought process in the edit of that one. I just thought that'd be kind of a fun one to do because it's one that I'm really proud of and very happy of. Oh yeah, there you go.
Very cool.
And that is obviously unedited and crooked, but that's the starting point, and then it finishes.
Don't you have that one printed at your house, David?
I do. Yes, I've got this one printed at my house. It's been printed several times. I've sold it a couple times, and it was in a art show several years ago and got like honorable mention. In fact, the juror, or whatever you call the guy, he said he would have selected it as the number one piece, but I signed it. I signed the mat, and he said, "You're not supposed to do that."
Oh, wow.
I was like, really? Like, so that was the whole reason that I went to like 4th place honorable mention. So, but it was still a nice pat on the back that I had a good photo.
Well, and after PPA, like, it's nice that they left you in as honorable mention because, they're so strict about those rules with IPP. So if anything is out of whack at all, it's immediate disqualification.
Well, apparently what happened was like it was several days after the competition, the art show or whatever. And it was the first time I'd entered. So I was like, I wasn't really that hurt. But several days later, they contacted me and said, you know what? We all decided that we really feel like your piece deserves some recognition beyond just a pat on the back, and so we want to give you this honorable mention. And I got paid a little bit of money, and I sold the print, so it was nice.
That's awesome. It's a great shot. I love it.
Yeah, and you had shared that earlier this week in our kind of private back channel, that's right. And then I thought that was Manhattan Pier, and then so I shared a shot that I thought was incredibly similar. Yeah, that is I think Manhattan Pier off the California coast.
Yours is the same one because we were looking at the Peter Lick shot that he had posted, and I was like, well, that's exactly the same one that Toby was shooting because I saw the same like markings and stuff on the pylon. And then Steve submitted one that was really cool. Where was that one?
Well, that's just Seacliff Beach in Aptos, California, where I grew up. So it's just there's a cement ship at the end of that pier. If anybody knows the area, and it's all broken off and stuff out in the ocean now. But we were exchanging those texts or group me, and I was like, I'm going to jump in here because I happened to be at my computer when those came through, and I was looking at old photos, and that one was right there. So
it was cool. I meant to comment. I'm sorry, I didn't want you to think I was dissing.
No. But kind of like, hey, we build the same piers in Aptos, but they're not symmetrical, and we use a lot more piling.
It was more abstract that way. It was cool. The thing I talk about in my video, real quick, I'll just say is the symmetry in this shot, because we are always teaching about rule of thirds and put your subject off to this side or that side, but there is a time and place for symmetry, like perfect symmetry. And structures like that. And Steve, you're an architectural photographer, so there are times when it works really well to make it almost look like a mirror image. and with just the subtle differences in this side, you know, the pylons on this side look different than this one. But that was what was the cool moment there with that photo. Was I was actually on the beach doing senior portraits for some friends down there, and I saw this pier and I was like, yeah, that's probably been photographed a million times. I'm not even going to take a picture of it. And it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm like, what am I going to do? And then I just walked under and I said, okay, now that's kind of cool. Like looking straight down it just looks really, it's kind of got this weird, like abstract look to it. So that was the motivation.
Well, thankfully, thanks to Toby's YouTube video, most recent YouTube video, Adobe Lightroom now has a perfectly symmetrical crop guidelines that we can use.
Yes.
Right.
I was actually really excited about it. At first I saw that and I was like, whatever. And then the shots where I like to do that symmetry and make sure that it's all squared up properly and stuff. So that's going to be helpful.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but that's totally true. It will help you be much more symmetrical with that overlay. Yeah. And we will talk more about those Lightroom updates a little bit later in the show. I'd love to hear your guys' opinions on them. You know, I think I know where you're gonna what side you're gonna fall on those ISO variant presets, but let's talk about it. Steve, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about your purchase sitting on your desk and how excited we are for you.
Yeah, so last week I had just made the purchase that morning, I think it was the day before. I contacted Toby for a link to right to the drone that I wanted to buy, and it came in on Friday. And I hate to admit this, but I have not even flown it yet. This is the Mavic Air 2 in all of its glory. I got as far as getting the propellers on and charging all the batteries and stuff, but it's just kind of sitting over here. So this is, let's see here. This is the side.
Good. Let's make you solo here. I forget. I have that power. There you go, Steve. Nice.
There it is.
Yeah.
And
dude, that's awesome.
It's pretty awesome.
I'm happy for you. Well, you're smart though. You haven't flown it in the house like I did when I got my Mavic Air when I first got it and crashed it into the interior wall.
I was just about to do that actually, but we had the grandkids here and I knew that they were just going to go crazy for it.
Yeah, grabbing it.
This is just going to be a mess. So.
Yeah. Start outside with a little bit of space. Give yourself some time, and it's you've flown mine some. You even broke propellers on one of my original ones. Totally not your fault.
A little easier now. For those watching that don't know, I bought this. I'm actually not much of a video guy. Getting something like this, it's of course exciting. It's really cool camera equipment, but it's not a real passion of mine. But I did this for my business. So this is for real estate photography. I'm taking a 107 certification class right now as we speak. I'm about halfway through that.
It's wonderful.
And so I'm going to be a commercial drone pilot when that's said and done. Then I can use this for my business. So that's the reason for the investment. And yeah, I'm excited. I'll probably end up loving it a lot more than I think once I get to using it and get comfortable with it. But I guess the first flight's a little intimidating.
Yeah, it is.
I actually was thinking about flying it, and I guess there is some built-in memory. But I didn't have any micro SD cards. For some reason, I just thought it was going to take a standard SD card. I didn't read up on that. But thankfully, Toby advised me yesterday or a couple of days ago on what size to get, and that arrives tomorrow. So.
See, I won't buy it because it doesn't have 2 card slots. So,
and then we have that.
Do you know you can actually connect that to the smart remote, which is that one with the screen built in?
Oh yeah, I was wondering about that. If that,
I still have that on loan here somewhere. I don't know where it went. And that one, my cords fell out. That one has SD card slots as well, or micro SD card slots. So you can have 2 SD card slots.
That's kind of cool. That's good to know.
Yeah. I gotta say, you know what though? This, Toby, you talked about this in your video, and this was actually something that I was super excited about in ordering this, because I've been researching drones for a couple of years. I really couldn't make a business justification for it for commercial purposes, but now it's pretty simple. And anyway, this redesigned controller is just awesome. To put your smartphone right here.
Oh, that's nice.
Tucked in right behind. And I like the idea of having the phone just kind of sit on top of this. You can use it with a case. Really easy up here now.
Yeah.
Cool. As opposed to hanging down below. It was always, Toby, I've watched you fly for years, and it always just seemed a little precarious with this phone just kind of dangling at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, I call that remote the cuss-free remote because I don't have to cuss at all when I'm using it. The other one, if I, not the smart remote is also a cuss-free remote, but the standard DJI remote, if I'm using my standard phone and I don't want to take the case off, I usually have to cuss a bit as I'm jamming it all together.
Yeah, so, I'm with you.
Especially if it's a time crunch, which sometimes on these trips, there's something amazing happening. I want to get that drone up in the air very, very quickly.
Right.
And having a remote that is a little clunky really does slow that process down.
And it never fails, right? When you get it there and you're ready to fly it, you get like a spam phone call on your phone, some telemarketer or something.
Yeah.
I need to review the smart remote before I send it back. Because it really, the downside is it destroy might be a little strong. It really impacts the portability of the whole system because it's a good bit larger, but not having to deal with spam calls or messages from your family coming in. I mean, yes, you could put your phone in airplane mode, but I always forget. Yeah. And also just having it be so quick and so ready to go is a huge upside. So there's pros and cons to it.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so I'm on a roll this week. I had a Monday video, a quick tip. That was about customizing Lightroom, personalizing and customizing it a little bit to work well for you. That's a 5-minute-ish video. I know they're supposed to be shorter, but 5 minutes is short for me these days.
Yes. Good.
I followed that up yesterday with a video talking about the Lightroom and Photoshop announcements, really just focused on Lightroom, actually, the updates to Lightroom. We'll talk a little bit about those during the show, but if you want to deep dive talks about all of those updates, you can go watch that. We've got this show today, and then I want to remind you that tomorrow evening is going to be an awesome Creative Lounge. It's episode 4. It's going live at 6 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, and we're going to be talking with Terrell Lloyd. He is the San Francisco 49ers professional photographer. He manages all of the photography with the team. He has been their photographer for many years. He's also a Canon Explorer of Light. So it's going to be just awesome to pick his brain about how that all works, how he got that job, and then mix in some of the social discussions and current events because he has photographed Colin Kaepernick. He is a Black American. So I imagine he has some opinions, and I'd be interested to hear them and how it all works all together. So
that's going to be awesome. That's great.
Make sure you put a reminder. You can go to photorec.tv/lounge right now, and it'll pop up to that video. And there's a little reminder button. Click it, and you'll get a little reminder tomorrow when it goes live. But, set yourself a little reminder as well, a little backup reminder. So, and you know what? I'm sorry. Chat room, welcome. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us today. I totally forgot, even though you all are, Steve, David, no offense, and I include myself here. We got like half a brain most of the time, but the chat room collectively, they're like 110% smart.
Yeah, so, I've got a quarter of a brain, so I'm dragging the mean down.
Well, it's it's all just a team effort to make this show work.
Yeah, I'm sitting on my headphone cord, which keeps pulling them out, so that's genius.
I keep doing the same.
And one other thing before we move on, in the show notes, the deal of the day, I sent a newsletter out and it's also on Instagram stories, 128 gigabyte SD card, the SanDisk medium speed, we'll call it, which honestly is fast enough for just about all of us, is on sale today for $26, $25.99 for a big card. Now, Angela asked on the pen community, she's like, who needs a card that big? And Brian Scanlon's response was great. It's exactly mine. If you've got 2 card slots, I like to have at least one big card slot in one of those. And it just sits there kind of acting as a backup that I don't have to remember to change too often. And I also just don't like having to juggle too many smaller cards on a trip. I like to shoot on those larger cards, keep shooting on them, but downloading every night, of course, until they're full. And then I swap out. So that's how I use a larger card. I don't know, gentlemen, you like 128 or still a little bit smaller than that?
I just shoot 128 now. All my CF cards from my Canon are 64 and 32. That's kind of where I was hanging out. But when I went to SDs with the Hassie, I went to 128 because they're really affordable, and I just like having that extra space. The file sizes are just getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah. Well, in my Z6, I mean, it's like a 25 megapixel sensor in the camera, and so A 64 has been like totally plenty for me, but with my D850, which I actually sold 2 days ago, I was shooting with the 120 or 128s or whatever. But now I have a Z7 to replace the D850, so I'll be continuing to use those big cards.
Did we know this? You just went all mirrorless.
I did.
Yeah, that's right. We were going to talk about this.
I didn't. It was a very sudden thing. I just. Would you say, Steve?
On one hand, it didn't surprise me at all, but on the other hand, I was like, man, he sold the D850. That thing is like the mothership of DSLRs.
It is, and I know it seems almost counterintuitive, but I did a shoot 2 weeks ago with both cameras, a mirrorless and a DSLR, and I was really frustrated trying to just seamlessly work between the two cameras. It just they feel so different, and I'm getting what I feel to be, I don't want to say better results from the Z6, but I kind of feel like I am sometimes, or I was, than I was getting with the D850. Not in the end. I mean, in the end, the D850 was, you could do amazing things with those files, but I just felt like the instant gratification was there with the Z more than it was with the D850. And I was like, well, I want to move in that direction anyway. And, the value of the D850 is going down and down because it's almost 3 years old. So I threw it up there at a really competitive price and it sold quickly. And I was like, well, you know what? It's done, and
how did you sell it? What platform?
Facebook Marketplace.
Oh,
I found. Yeah. I think that's probably the best place to sell things these days, because it's not just one. Well, and it's not just the marketplace. You can find all these different specific groups in Facebook for the type of gear that you have. If you're a Nikon shooter, there are a million Nikon for sale forums and Sony and Canon and everything. And so it's a great place for people who are very targeted on that brand to go like, oh, I want to see what's up for sale. And it sold. I got a lot of interest in it. Sold quickly. And I'll miss it for sure, but I'm so in love with the mirrorless system and the lenses. I just want to really dive deep into that world. So
yeah, very cool. Steve, I'm so glad you asked how you sold it. That's a great question. Was that local or did you have to ship it?
It was local, thankfully. I put it in a Nikon forum that it's like a for sale forum that's nationwide, but luckily a guy right up the road contacted me, and we were able to meet halfway, and it was pretty easy. I've sold quite a few things there, and I don't know that I've bought anything from Facebook Marketplace, but I just cool. The way I see it sometimes is just like if you got value in something and it's gonna allow you to try something else, why not? I mean, on the one hand, I could see keeping your cameras, we've talked about that before, like keeping something for that nostalgia sake of like, this was the camera I shot back in that era. Mm-hmm. I understand that, but I just feel like, unless it's something that's truly like this iconic, like the Hasselblad, I feel like is just such an iconic, it will be such a memorable camera. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's one you don't want to sell ever, but
my wife, I was going to sell my Canon stuff when I invested in the Hasselblad. But she talked me out of it, and I'm glad that she did, because this was first full. Well, no, it's not my first full frame, but it's the first camera I had where I really started traveling the world and teaching and stuff. And so there's some nostalgia to it, but I'm not that attached to it. But I do love having a DSLR. I'm still not ready to give that up just yet.
Yeah, I hear you. I didn't think I would be. When I bought the Z6 a year ago, I bought it to do video. I wanted to start doing video, and I knew it would be a pretty decent video camera that I might occasionally take some photos with. And then and I know the one card slot thing does put people off, but to my knowledge, I haven't read of anybody having a XQD card fail.
Yeah.
And so I'm not even really that worried about that. And I've loved the functionality of it and the results I'm getting. So, it's nice also now that I'm shooting with two cameras that are identical. They look exactly the same. All the controls are the same. It'll be seamless. It's just one's going to have twice the resolution.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. And Brian wants to know, I'm sure Roy put it into chat, but let's just answer it right now. Are you using adapted lenses on the Z, or I know you were using some, but have you switched over to all mirrorless ZMount lenses now?
Unfortunately, with the COVID-19 stuff, one of the most sought after lenses in the mirrorless lineup has not been released yet, and that's the 70-200 2.8S, which will be fantastic. It's expensive, but it has not been released. And but when it is released, that's definitely one for me to work towards. So I am kind of shooting with both the f-mount glass, and I own two Z-mount lenses now. I own the 24-70 2.8 and the 50 millimeter 1.8, and they're both fantastic lenses. And but even with the adapter, it works perfectly. It works flawlessly. It doesn't affect sharpness. It doesn't affect autofocus that I can tell. So it's really not a big deal, other than just having to put an adapter on. So
yeah.
It's
any word on when that lens is coming?
Well, they keep saying any day now, but it was supposed to release in March, and then there it is. It's a pricey little bugger, but
compared to what Nikon was doing with their latest 70 to 200 2.8 full
range,
it's actually a lot less.
Yeah, you're right. Well, it's so much more than I've ever spent on a lens. So,
but they were getting up to $3,000.
Yeah, they were, and the Canon glass is super expensive too. But this lens is what's funny about it. It's a Z-mount mirrorless lens, and it's the exact same size as the f-mount. It's not going to save me any size or weight, but what they're doing with the Z-mount lenses, I don't know how they're doing it. It's some voodoo, but they are so clean and sharp. There's like zero chromatic aberration or any of that stuff, which I see on some of my pro f-mount glass. I've got a 35 millimeter 1.4. It's a super lens, but you get chromatic aberration on it, and it was not a cheap lens either. So I just love how crisp and clear these lenses are. So I'm a fan, it's nice to have two cameras that will work similarly for now until I can slowly replace the lenses with new glass.
It seems to be that a lot of the newer lenses that are coming out, they're doing new coatings on the front glass element, and that's making a really big difference. I thought it was just a marketing ploy and stuff, but when Canon came out with their most recent lenses, like the 70 to 200 2.8 version 3, I think, compared to the 2, there wasn't a lot of difference in terms of clarity or distortion or anything like that, but the anti-glare and the stuff that happens with the coating that they put on the front glass element made a huge difference. I think the Northrops did a video comparing the two. It could be somebody else. Maybe there's a channel like a Photo Rec something channel.
Yeah, it's some.
Anyway, it was that seems to not just be a marketing thing. Like that's pretty legit.
No, it's legit. I don't know what they're doing, but it's definitely, and even like the color. I keep telling people that the 24-70 that they came out with, because I've never been a huge fan of the 24-70 lenses. I know that they're a good versatile range, but they've never given me like the wow factor that I thought they would until now. And this one, it feels like I'm shooting a prime lens, other than it doesn't go down to 1.4 or 1.8, but it's so good. Like the quality of the bokeh and the color, it's fantastic.
Nice.
Awesome.
Cool. Very cool. All right. Let's move on to the part of the show that we enjoy a lot. And that's where pen members, you submit your images for us to take a look at, share some feedback on it, and teach you a little bit of Lightroom tips and tricks while we do that. And just a reminder, if you're watching the show and you're not a pen member, that's the Photo Enthusiast Network. We are running a fantastic discount right now. You can join for your first year, $24. It gives you access to being able to submit images and getting feedback from us professional photographers, which a few minutes ago I did disparage and say we all have like half a brain, but we're actually pretty good at this, I think. And tons and tons of content already on the Pen site, including, I didn't mention this as I was talking about what I've done this week. I put out a Tuesday tip to the Pen members on noise. And it started because I was like, wow, Topaz, I'd been playing with Topaz for, about 24 hours, really impressed with what it's doing. So I started to write about that. But then I was like, well, this isn't educational enough. This is just telling people that Topaz is pretty great. So I took some time to write my tips for how to be able to lower your ISO when you're out in the field shooting, talking a little bit about philosophically how much noise is too much noise, how to deal with noise in Lightroom and what all of those different sliders mean, and then taking a look at Topaz and how it compares to Lightroom. Spoiler alert, it blows Lightroom away 99.9% of the time.
Yeah.
So, but I was writing all of this and I was like, I need to say the little part about how much noise is too much noise, because I think this isn't a big shocking statement, but it can greatly vary depending on the nature and kind of content of your image. I think wildlife photographers, we want this really clean, sharp, clinical view of the wildlife. There should be very, very little noise. But I mean, I think of street photographers, documentarians, there can be a lot of noise, and the noise can even, I think, be part of the story in a lot of cases. So that's kind of how I wrote that, a little bit more eloquently. But I don't know if you guys have any other thoughts on how much noise is too much noise before we dive into these.
That's a good question.
I just threw that at you.
No, I mean, I think I think it just depends on the photo. I was helping somebody edit a photo recently that was taken in Mexico in this kind of gritty part of town with a mural on the wall, and it was all like gritty, and she was wondering about noise reduction. I said, I don't even think that has any effect on this photo right now. I don't even think it matters. Like, in fact, it almost looks better with a little noise, because it just it looks like a raw, like old timeless film photo, Yeah. So, but then if you're doing like a really pristine portrait or something, which if I'm doing a headshot, I don't want a bunch of noise in it. I want it to be very clean, and you almost want it to be, I hate to use the word digital, but you want it to have that. We live in the digital age where everything is sharp and perfect and 4K and all this. So that's the time to do that, I think.
Yeah. And the whole noise thing is almost becoming this moving target. Obviously, you want to have a really good understanding of it, because you want to be able to have an effective shutter speed to have no blur whatsoever and as little noise as possible. So I have a lot of shots that are clear, but they're super noisy.
Yeah.
And it says to me, you could have chosen a lower ISO to take that noise down. But then I more often than not see a shot that is clean in terms of noise, but it's blurred. So the reason I say it's kind of moving now, though, is the stuff that's going on with artificial intelligence and Topaz and what they're doing. And I know Skylum, they're doing AI. It's incredible what can be accomplished. Sharpening, I never thought that we would see something like that. That's pretty unbelievable how good it is. And their noise reduction is truly unbelievable. I know we've been talking offline about it all week. So it's kind of funny, because now you can have a really grainy shot and get it really clean.
It's amazing.
And I don't know how I feel about that, because I
know
as good as possible in camera. I want you to have a basic understanding of the fundamentals of photography and the triangle and the exposure triangle and how to work that effectively, rather than just getting out there and spraying and praying. It's incredible. Software's doing.
It's certainly an extreme argument for really keeping around photos that you like, but feel like they might be too noisy or need some serious work that you're just not capable of, or you can't figure out how to make Lightroom work. In another 2-3 years, you might have something you can just plop them into, and they're going to look a lot better. So don't be so heavy-handed with the delete key. Even out of focus shots, which is kind of crazy for me to say. Although, disclaimer. Last week, we showed Kevin Walk's slightly out of focus shot with and put it through the AI sharpen, and we collectively were like, holy crap, that's amazing. I tried to recreate that with some of my own shots, and I could not get it to work as well, even some that weren't even as soft as that one. So your mileage may really vary with at least the sharpening program. The denoise seems to be consistently better than Lightroom.
Yeah, and you never want to be out there shooting with these tools in mind. Like, well, if I don't nail it, at least I've got Sharpen AI. I mean, it's totally a last resort. There's nothing like getting it right in the camera, even if you end up using one of those things anyway, just to supplement it a little. If you start with a very pure image, there's nothing like it's in the same way that like taking a photo of a great subject and just having something really intriguing will always trump editing the heck out of a mediocre image, like one that's like, it's kind of boring, but I edit it really well. It doesn't matter. Like you can take a stellar, a shot of a stellar subject or something. I think like that pier was one of those for me. Was one of the first times I took a shot where I was like, holy cow, it's not like it's not like I was like this amazing photographer. It just sort of worked, and I didn't have to do a lot to edit it. It just was there, so.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Cool. All right, let's dive in. We've got a couple of images to talk about, and first up is Kevin's. And again, this is the Lightroom tips and tricks section. And if you'd like to submit images to us in the future, consider joining photorec.tv/ join is the easiest way to access that discount. All right, Kevin told me that he did very little editing to this. This is almost straight out of camera. The sky truly was on fire. My words, not his, but he said the sky really was like this. So gorgeous reflection shot here. And I don't know, gentlemen, what do you think? Would you go for, we see some detail in these trees here. Would you go for lightening that or darkening that? Which way would you go with this?
I would lighten it for sure. If you can get some detail out of there, because it's either that or cut out the reflection. When you cut it right across the middle, it just looks like this big dark band that goes across. If you want to use it as a silhouette, that's fine, but just cut out the reflection. All your attention is then on the sky. But it's right through the middle, so I would definitely try to lighten that out and bring some detail out. Yeah,
definitely. And I think I would definitely work on the crop. Maybe putting the water line, the shoreline in the lower third. I really love the sky, and I love hinting at the reflection. I don't know that we need to see all of the reflection, or you could go the other way and lose some of the sky and capitalize on the reflection. But I don't know. I just feel like maybe there's a sweet spot for that.
Yeah, or the whole image is horizontal, but it's like almost an 8x10 sort of.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to do symmetrical, you can do that, but I would encourage more like a 16:9 ratio or something.
Yeah, that could be cool.
Very horizontal.
Yeah, well, in that case, it is kind of nice having that shoreline in the middle.
I'm torn a little bit because it does feel like it almost ends right over here. This almost looks like a bullet. And so I might, bring it back a little bit so that we feel like this kind of goes on forever. Just pulls in a little bit tighter. We are cropping out a lot of the sky there. I don't know.
I would like to see a version of this, Toby, freeform crop without the reflection. Maybe even keep a silhouette on the mountains, but just do a really horizontal kind of thing. And I don't know. That's just kind of falling flat for me, I guess.
Yeah, it's definitely.
Yeah.
No. When you've got the reflection, it's nice to include it. But I know what you're saying. Sometimes it's like you can play with a crop for a long time until you just find like the maximizing what you've got. You just got to figure out what's the best iteration of this rectangle.
Yeah. Cropping is, and you want to think about this when you're shooting, of course. But cropping, assuming you don't have to go too extreme with it, is one of the most effective ways to tell your story. Because now you're taking the subject, whatever it is, and putting it intentionally in a certain place within the frame. And but you gotta, I encourage people to kind of think about that as they're shooting, though. Maybe shoot a little wider so that you can crop in for your story, but try to think about it before you hit that shutter button. I think a lot of times we're so quick to just shoot, and we just want to get the shot that we don't really intentionally think about the story that we're ultimately going to tell with that exposure.
I would agree with that. I think that's probably one of the hardest things to learn in photography as a photographer is to really look through that viewfinder and pause for a moment if you can, unless there's something amazing happening that's going to flash by. But if you've got a moment, really look through that viewfinder and figure out what you want to show, what you want to say. We're organizing rectangles is what I've heard it described as. We're just trying to figure out what's going to go in this frame. And it doesn't mean don't shoot a little wider so you can crop, but just, really it's such an important part of the process. And it's great to hit it on the front end and to give yourself the room to work on it on the back end. But when you really get it on the front end, it's again, it's like nailing it in camera. There's nothing like it.
Yeah.
I almost like, a vertical image too. That's incredibly symmetrical and just a little bit of the above and the below. So a lot of different ways you could go with that. Very cool. Definitely. All right. Thank you, Kevin. Moving on to Adam Beck's very cool night Milky Way shot.
Oh, did he share this on Facebook? This looks
he did. Yes, he did.
Wow.
That's awesome, Adam. Nice shot.
Very cool.
We talk a lot about, and Steve, I'm stealing this from you, things that are the beginning of a story. And we have these trees down here, which sets the scene for where we are. And when we go out and photograph the stars, every once in a while, I'll catch somebody on a workshop just pointing their camera straight up. And rarely are those pictures interesting unless they're, they've got some nebula or something that they're doing crazy long exposures of, because it doesn't give you a sense of place. It doesn't ground you as the viewer. Like, where am I? Am I in the middle of a desert? Am I in the middle of a forest? Is it snowy? Is it, scary? And so I love that we have a little bit of these trees kind of showing up down here, but I'd like a little bit more. I don't know. What do you think? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, it's kind of like, and I hope this doesn't sound like I'm dissing the photo. It's frustrating as a viewer because you're like, you're hinting at something that actually is a cool element. These trees that sort of like, you could just take a picture of the sky and that would be cool, but it's kind of neat to bring a little bit of the earth into it. But I'm just not seeing enough of it to like, to really grasp the foreground and where am I in the midst of, like, when I'm looking up at the sky, what am I seeing right in front of me? And what's, it's, yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
In other words.
Adam, if you're watching this, I don't know if we necessarily have time, Toby, but what I would do with this shot is I would take it into Photoshop and I would create a canvas behind it with a couple of extra inches at the bottom, and then do kind of a content aware fill or even a clone stamp, and just extend those trees down. And even if it just kind of turns into black silhouette down there, it just would give you a little bit more of that down there. I like what you did with this crop, getting rid of that far left side, and especially getting rid of that vignetting at the top. And I know the reason why it's there is you got all this light pollution and stuff, and then it breaks free at the top. But this looks better in this type of crop, but I would just create more trees at the bottom. Unless, Adam, your original file, if this was cropped in, I can't tell. If you have more trees at the bottom, that would be.
Or you might have another shot where you could do, I like your suggestion, Steve, take it into Photoshop and add a little bit more down below.
Yeah, right.
I definitely think you could bring that in from another shot. But your processing of the Milky Way and the stars themselves, I think are beautiful.
Yes.
Might tend a little bit bluer than I process these days. If we go right just a bit, I feel like the blue backs off and you get just a bit more sense of the kind of colors that are in the Milky Way itself.
Well, and Toby, you can go into the color panel and just reduce, or you can darken the blacks, but you may lose some stars when you do that. But there's enough there. I mean, there's a lot.
Yeah.
A lot there. What was the shutter speed on this?
It says 13 seconds, ISO 3200.
That's just right, man. You exposed it just right. 13 seconds.
Perfect.
To the dot.
Yeah, looks really nice. Very, very nice. This must be a planet. That's a bright guy right there. Yeah. And so when we zoom in, we could talk a little bit about noise. We're going to move on here in just a second. But, yes, it has noise, but it's a nice shot, and you would be able to print this very large without worry about any of that noise, really. So, yes, I saw earlier in the comments when we said how much noise is too much, Gareth had said, I think ISO 1600 where it starts to get noisy for me. And I'm reluctant to throw out a number because it's somewhat camera dependent and very much dependent on the shot. I've got ISO 6400 shots during the daytime where I needed a really fast shutter speed that looked great. And then I've got ISO 800 shots where it was lower light. I was struggling to get settings I wanted. And, it doesn't look very good. And so it really depends on kind of what you're shooting.
Definitely. I have a shot from the D5 that I owned that was at 50,000 ISO, and I just was trying it, and it was usable. So
50,000.
Yeah, if I could pull it up, I would. But I was like, you got to be kidding me. So
that's cool. Yeah, and I was doing the test shots the other day of the little Lego dude. I've got a 16,000 with just a little bit of cleanup. I was like, this looks good.
It's incredible.
50,000.
Well, yeah, but that's like rare. I mean, I could probably shoot 100 other 50,000, at 50,000, and they wouldn't be, usable. But for some reason, this one shot, it was like a concert, and the lights, and there was a hand up in the front. There's like a silhouette, and it worked.
Cool. Very cool. All right, we're going to move on. Susan Stevens, Desert Cactus Flower on Black, it says, is the title. That's a very straightforward title. No, I think she just was file naming. This is gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
We got no metadata, so I don't know what you shot this at, but your depth of field, I'm just seeing sharpness down inside the flowers. Lots of great detail, a little bit of softness way down here at the bottom one, but really just lovely.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah, and this is a really nice example of why odd numbers are so visually pleasing, because if this was 2 flowers, it would still be a cool shot, but because there's 3, and this, interestingly, this shot would play really well as a horizontal or vertical, but I like the vertical orientation as presented. I think it's gorgeous, and I think from what I can tell, looking at my screen, the processing of it was done really well. You're not losing the detail in the whites and blowing stuff out. You can still see the layers and the depth, and it feels very 3-dimensional.
Yes, it does. It just feels, I mean, I'll use the word perfect. I mean, there's just something, there's not a whole lot to critique, really. I mean, in my opinion, the only thing I would even wonder is if maybe you had a little more room at the top, you know, because that one little petal is encroaching on the edge of the top of the frame. I would just wonder if there's like a little bit more room. If not, in Photoshop, that's an easy fix to add a little bit more black space. Just if you go to frame it, you know, you don't want to cut the tip of one of the petals off, but that's a very nitpicky minor thing.
Yeah, really, overall, really, really nice. I'm noticing here, there's a couple, obviously you've clipped this out of the back. I can tell that because I could see a couple spots you didn't quite get cleaned up.
Oh, okay.
And so I would just take this into Photoshop and make sure, I mean, it looks like a little island archipelago. You've got a little piece of something there and a little more speck up here. So just really make sure that you've cleaned all of those up, but really gorgeous shot. Very nice.
To David's point about the petal kind of encroaching at the top, I would make it equidistant from the bottom, or I would even allow yourself a little extra space on both sides.
Yeah.
Still go in equidistance, because if you go to print with this and you put it in a frame, it's going to start to encroach around the edges a little bit, and you don't want it, want part of the petal, showing behind or being hidden behind the frame.
Yeah, exactly.
Sue, this was Steven's shot. You should really consider printing this one. This is a beautiful.
Awesome.
Well done.
Yeah. And so you should consider submitting this to the option 1 review as well, with just a little bit more cleanup. And, what made me remember that it's a lovely shot, but Brian mentioning this would be fun to play with some virtual matte colors that pull from some of those petal colors there as well. Steve, do you have a color suggestion if you were throwing in a little line on the virtual matte?
I would probably pull out that pink.
Yeah,
but I would tone down the opacity of it a little bit. Because that pink sort of goes from a darker pink to a lighter pink, and I would choose from the lighter side because it's going up against black. So I would do a black matte with just a very, very thin pink line, or maybe yellow, but I would try to pull out that pink because there's just a little bit of it, and you really want the viewer to concentrate on that. But super thin, like, I don't know, 0.03 of an inch. Depending on the file size, that's hard to throw a number out there, but just a very, very thin line because it's going to show up a lot boxing in the photograph with a black mat around it.
Yeah. Very nice. Very cool. All right, we're going to move on. Pam Case has submitted in a little beautiful hummingbird. What we got to work on, Pam, we've been working on this, but you're still not doing a good job. Love you. You've got to send bigger pictures in, Pam. This is little. This looks beautiful. It looks sharp, but I'd love to see it a little bit bigger. But I think you've done a really nice job here. We've got rule of thirds, bird off on the right-hand side, looking into the larger spot of the frame.
Yeah.
Really, really nice. I'd say if you had a moment more, hummingbirds don't always sit still for too long. If you could have stepped a half step to the left to try to get this leaf from intersecting, to remove that intersection and frame the hummingbird's butt right in this space here, I think that would make for a little bit of a stronger image, but really pretty nice.
Pam says it's really cropped.
Gotcha.
Yeah. About that, because, and the reason I am is all the edges are very kind of pixelated. You can see a spread of white pixels around the leaves, and you can kind of see it on the branch. And so either it was a little heavy-handed with some clarity or sharpening, or it was cropped in quite a bit. And I think
or a little of both.
Yeah, that's a consequence of the crop, and also the file size being small. It's really hard to judge that. If you have a bigger file size, there's more to kind of play with.
Yeah. The one thing that I'd like to do here is just bring up a little bit more brightness out of the kind of throat of the hummingbird, just a bit, but really pretty minor. I don't know if I actually even did a change. Let's see. Let's turn that off and back on. Yeah, a little bit. Pretty minor. Pretty minor. Why? Well, no, actually, let's do this real quick. Jamie Morgan said she sent hers in. Let me get hers in real quick. She was a little late, but I'll do it for you, Jamie. It's synchronized folder. We should have, we have 2. We might only have time for 1, but we're going to bring these in real quick here. Yeah. Okay. Well,
that's awesome.
That's really cool.
Very, very nice shot, Jamie. And so this is a fully matted digital matte with a little thin color. It looks like you're pulling, I can't quite tell that color, but it looks wolfish to me from one of these guys here.
So I would have loved to have seen, I mean, first of all, Jamie, this shot is killer. And I think I've seen one of her shots before with this wolf pack, with the one black one. I could be wrong, but it kind of has a familiar, I haven't seen this scene though before. And I love the snow that's being kicked up in the back.
Yeah.
I personally, if this was my shot, I would have done a white matte. I would have made sure that the white in the blank space was as white as possible without blowing stuff out, because in case you go to print, it's going to be kind of flat. And then I would do a white matte with a very, very thin line, pretty much the way she did it, but I would use white only because this boxed it in a lot, and I would want to see it. I don't know. I just think white might play a little better. It looks great, but I would prefer white personally.
Yeah.
I did. I think your comment, if you're going to go with white, you really want to make sure your snow is white, because that's going to kind of show your snow as not being white.
The key part. Yeah, that's a little difficult. So
I brought the exposure up a half a stop, and I think we're still in good shape there. I think you have room to bring that up a little bit more. I like it.
This is.
And I brought the overall exposure up, but I might then back our black wolf back off just a bit. We want him to be black, not he's starting to turn brown now with the brighter colors. And this might be a great image. It's pretty sharp, but this might be a great image to run through the topaz sharpener. Careful not to overdo it, but really see if you can get that fur to pop without getting pixelated. That would be cool. Very nice.
We were talking about overall exposure, which, obviously this is a global edit, and you kind of start there. Just so you guys know, I work with black and white a lot. If I make a change to anything, I basically go back and readjust my black and white sliders.
Yeah.
Or I pull into Photoshop and start cleaning things up and, going from there.
Brian mentioned that he loves the room in front of the wolves. And my first instinct was to say not to have it. But the more I'm looking at it, I actually really do like it. And it's almost a little bit unconventional to do that, to have as much room in front. But I don't know what you guys think about it, but for some reason, I actually really like that you kind of see where they're headed. And so I just thought that was worth mentioning, because it's definitely, a lot of times we would say, oh, don't have so much space on the side. But I don't know. There's something very artistically pleasing to me about that. So good on you, Jamie.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good call, and you could tell because the snow is flying. These guys are moving, and it feels like they're going to be out of the frame in a second. So I think it's a nice balance.
Yes.
Nice.
So there's a couple comments that I wanted to address while we're looking at the image. First, from Tanya, she says, "I'm like a stubborn toddler when it comes to virtual mats. Keep convincing me, guys." There's not really any convincing, I feel, that needs to happen here. The only reason we talk about virtual mats, in my opinion, is for like competition purposes and finishing a photo off. And this is going, with the PPA standards and what they're looking for. You don't have to submit with a virtual mat. It's just that most people do because it does a really nice job of finishing it off. If you're going to print from home or at home, or not print at home, but make a print and have it at your house, I personally do not like printing with a virtual mat. I like to share it that way to finish an image off. But I think an image like this, actually without a virtual mat, probably looks best, to be honest with you. Sure. If I was entering it into a competition, I would try my best to do a white one and see if I could get that to work. Or maybe, try some sort of different type of virtual mat. I don't know offhand where to go with that, but I do think that it would probably look better without one because it keeps the landscape open. The other comment is from Jamie, and she said, apparently maybe this was entered in a competition, but the judges had made a comment that there was chromatic aberration on the tail of the black wolf.
I saw that comment. I'm looking in here. I mean, yes, there is some, but I got to go to 3-1 to see that. At 1-1, it looks pretty good. And
I was struggling to see it too, and I thought maybe it was because I was looking at it from my screen. But sometimes, I hate to say this about certain colleagues and stuff, but sometimes people throw around that chromatic aberration word to sound important and like they're seeing it. And there's times when I've seen people say there's chromatic aberration here, and I frankly just don't see it. But I never claim to have the best eye for that type of thing. I'm struggling to see that in the tail. But
yeah. I mean, Jamie, if in the, this is a JPEG we're working on in your master copy, I went to profile, made sure chromatic aberration was removed. And then I took the dropper and just came in real slow and found that little bit of purple hue and removed. If you wanted to, you could brush around the edge of it and reduce saturation, or even use the new nifty hue shifter to kind of shift that purple to something that looked like it was more just part of the fuzz of the tail as well. But yeah, it's not something that I would spend time talking about generally. But if you did want to print very large, then you go in there and clean that up a little bit.
Yeah, it's an awesome shot, though.
It is. Cool. It's very cool. Let's stay in Lightroom for a minute. That was all the pictures. Lori, I know yours just came in too, but the show has already been an hour, and so we will get that next week. And you've seen it as I poked around. The tone curve has been updated. No real change to it except visually. I think it's a lot more friendly to work with now. And the color panel has those same rainbow colored dots now instead. Again, just aesthetics, no difference. The real difference is in the local area adjustments. We now have this hue shifter adjustment tool. And if we get into any other image, let's see, bring up something like one of the images. So the image I showed in the example the other day, the little dude in his hat, how that works is when you're in the develop module, I put on a little local area adjustment on his hat that is inverted. So it's inside. If you hit the O, turns green. So you can see where this local area adjustment is. And then you just can shift this to change the color. And Steve, you did a pretty cool Photoshop tutorial for Penn, I don't know, a year or so ago that showed this. But now here in Lightroom, you have this control.
Yeah.
This is nice. I'm excited about it, and especially when you combine it with the color, the range mask color, where you say, okay, I only want to select this certain color to begin with. Now let me very carefully shift just that color. So those two things in combo are pretty cool.
Have you tried it with using the brush instead of a radial filter?
I have not.
Because that's probably when I was watching a tutorial, and that's probably where I would have gone to first for me, is to just brush that on there and then start playing around with the color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Using the auto masking.
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited about this feature because there are a lot of times when I feel like there's one little spot that I want to change the hue of. And, you know, you could go in there with a brush previous to this update. You could go in there with a brush and you could play with the temperature and all that. But to really, really change the color and to play with different options for color, because, you know, there's certain photos when you're editing, for whatever reason, you know, it might be something in nature, but just because our eyes see that the colors work together when they're in camera, they don't always work together. For whatever reason, like the green of the grass doesn't always blend in with the sky the way that you saw it with your naked eye, you know? And so I loved the idea of being able to just tweak these specific areas of a photo and really fine tune those colors. I'm excited about this.
Yeah. So yeah, the brush with auto mask turned on is fantastic. So, you know, you don't want a red tea, blue tea, green tea, he's a green overload now, but that suits me. I'm kind of green at heart. So as well. Yeah. So that's pretty nifty. And then the other one, and this is what I teased early on, gentlemen, is the ISO variant presets. What do you think about? Well, let me tell people, catch up people. So in the past, real quick, when you applied a preset, it applied equally to every image that you applied it to, whether that image was an ISO 1600 image or an ISO 100 image. Your exposure that you set in the preset, your black levels, your noise reduction, your sharpening, all equal. Now you can set up a preset that looks and says, hey, this is an ISO 100 image. I'm not going to do any noise reduction to it. Hey, this is an ISO 1600 image. I'm going to do 50 noise reduction. One preset can make that determination based on how you set it up. You guys interested?
I don't know, man. You know,
for me, Toby.
What's that?
I'll let you answer for me.
Steve, you're not a big preset guy. Do you use presets at all?
No.
Yeah.
And I don't have anything against them. It's not the way that I like to edit. I've tried them in the past, mainly when I was kind of getting started editing. So yeah, it's not really my thing.
Yeah.
I treat each image, but see, that's the thing. Like, it's kind of weird because I shoot real estate. So there's a lot of times where I'll shoot a room and it's the same lighting and stuff, and presets would be probably very helpful. But each image, even the same room, I edit, you know, kind of individually, and it's just what I like to do.
Yeah, totally. David Carr, how about you?
You know, the only presets I tend to use, and it's very seldom, might be some of the black and white presets, because you can kind of scroll through and see some different looks. And sometimes it's like, you know what, that's actually pretty much how I would want to process this as a black and white. And so it's a nice shortcut. But, you know, I've spent money on preset packs only to just be like, why did I spend this money? I mean, I don't like any of them. And even if it's something that's been, you know, award winning or whatever, a lot of times I just want to do what I want to do to the photos. But like Steve, you know, if I go shoot a bunch of portraits or, you know, especially like a wedding, and I need everything to kind of have the same feel, I can see the merits of having the presets. But for whatever reason, I just have not had the success that I want to have with them enough to where I just edit and get a look that I like. And then I just kind of copy and paste that look to everything. And then, but I still end up having to go in and tweak things, you know, and because what I did on this photo, even if I copy and paste those settings onto this one, that doesn't mean that they're going to look like they're from the same shoot. You know, I still have to like look at everything. And that's probably the most time consuming part of editing something like a wedding, you know? So the presets, I know a lot of people that that's like all they do. That's their editing, preset, and they're done. I just can't do it.
Yeah. I'm I think in the middle. I have very few presets. But I am a fan of that auto preset on import. I have it start that kind of base edit where I use or rely on Lightroom to automatically look at each of these pictures. And now on top of that, I could have it do additional noise reduction if it's a higher ISO image. I'll be honest though, it does make me a little nervous. Even using the auto preset, sometimes I have to undo, but so often it's correct that I'm okay with undoing every once in a while. But I don't want to look at a picture and go, this is this is kind of mushy and detailless, and then go, oh, that preset did a bunch of noise reduction on this because I shot it at a high ISO. I'd rather be able to see that, and then for me to individually decide that, that it needs a little bit more or a little bit less.
Sure.
But I think it's a neat step forward. If you're interested in how to make them, go watch my video that I released yesterday. It's pretty easy. And it's kind of cool that you can either select an image at the bottom of the ISO range and at the top, and then images that come in the middle of that ISO, it'll mathematically figure out where those settings should fall. I think you're really leaving a lot to chance, because it really is just kind of a mathematical calculation. And an ISO 200 versus an ISO 1600, you know, that the difference in noise isn't a linear mathematical calculation, in my opinion. Right. So I really wouldn't do that. But you can also just have an ISO setting, or sorry, settings for each ISO that you're going to bring in. So you could have a 200 setting, a 400 setting, an 800 setting, a 320 setting. Maybe some of those mathematics is going to work out because it's going to be such a narrow band that it fits in. But and then bring them in. Or you don't necessarily have to sorry, too much necessary there. You can just have a noise reduction preset that is ISO variant and click and watch it apply at once. So you don't necessarily have to import with this on as well. Okay. So I don't think I'll be using this as an import preset anytime soon. But I might have a couple presets sitting on the side that's like higher ISO noise reduction, mid ISO noise reduction, and then allow the program to do a little bit of the work for me. We'll see.
It was hilarious. Your tutorial, I know we've referenced it quite a bit on this show, and for good reason, because you did a really nice job of just going through all the new updates to Lightroom. And you did spend the bulk of the time on the ISO noise reduction range, or whatever they could variant. But as soon as you got to that DOS screen, I thought, man, I know he's going to pick on me on this show. We talked about this, because this is just, I glanced away for like 30, not even 30 seconds, probably 10 seconds, having a drink of water or something. I come back and there's this DOS screen up on the tutorial that I was watching. I could still hear your voice, but I didn't see the screen for a second.
DOS tutorial. It's just an XML edit. You know, I hesitated to put that in because I was like, you know what? This is going to apply to so few people realistically. But I was impressed with how easy it was to read. And I was like, oh, can I just copy and paste this one section of code and then change these values? Yeah, and it works. So I like, well, maybe somebody will like that way of making it work.
I actually learned a lot by watching that. I was like, good Lord, where is he going with this? But then you simplified it. I was like, oh, this is very robust. I'm never going to use it. But for somebody that this matters to, they have this functionality now. And that's impressive. I'm impressed, but it's just not really in my wheelhouse, at least not right now. That could change. 5 years from now, I could be an XML expert.
Yep. No worries. All right. So I think that's all of the big updates to Lightroom that we wanted to hit. But now let's move over to Photoshop, because I didn't talk about those in the video at all. The big one for Photoshop that really impacts photographers is the update to the subject select tool, which, Steve, can we use your chicken picture for a moment?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Steve sent me this beautiful chicken picture earlier today that you are going to get printed at some point. We were just talking about how Topaz, both denoise and sharpen, working on it. But this is a really nice image to first do the select subject. I've shown this on the show before. They've further refined this. And let's just see how it does with select subject. This is where Photoshop determines what the subject is in the frame and selects it automatically for you. There you go. There are the marching ants, and it did a good job, but not a perfect job. So it did miss a little bit of these softer feathers that are a little lighter in the back. But in general, really quite nice.
That is pretty good.
Yeah. Let's look down in the grass. How'd it do down here?
Wow.
Oops, sorry. Nicely follows, misses the legs. It sees those as something different.
Well, they're pretty far out of focus too.
Yeah. And the way I would fix this, I tried to show this the other day and it didn't work, but let's see if it does today. I go into the Q tool for the quick mask brush, And then make sure you got a black and white brush, and then you can just kind of come down through here real quick and clean that up a little bit better. So it definitely is getting better. Now, the example that they show would be better to do on something like this shot. I know you've been in quarantine for a while, Steve, but where's all that hair hiding right now?
Yeah, thankfully, when it got to that level, my barber opened up and I could get a haircut. So,
man,
this was me just a couple of weeks ago.
Wow, gosh, there's no telling what's hiding in that dew.
You know what's hilarious about this picture, and I'll be really quick, but this was right before. In fact, I'm wearing the T-shirt that we wore on a mission trip to Haiti right after the earthquake in 2010. So we were preparing for this trip to Haiti, and it was at the beginning of November, and this was Halloween. And so I had this on, but I had just shaved my head. A bunch of us guys that were going on this mission trip just decided, let's buzz our hair off. So underneath here, I'm actually like bald. But Halloween like this and just scare all the kids that were coming to the door. It was great.
Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, so I just did select subject, and it really did a quite nice job. And I'll be honest, I think there's a way to easily refine this further that is part of the update, but I don't remember how you get into that. So, but that's there.
Let the record show that I was a trendsetter, though. I mean, Colin Kaepernick now has this do, but I was doing it well before he started growing his hair out.
It's pretty cool. I mean, the only thing it's missing is a "I Shoot Raw" T-shirt. So,
yeah, that's a definite Halloween costume right there.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on and talk about some other stuff. I think we have other stuff to talk about before the show gets too long. A couple of news stories. First and foremost is SD card recall from Sony. Look, I have all of those SD cards that they've recalled. This one definitely falls into it. This one, my eyes have gotten too old manish to tell until I get like a little magnifying glass or something, because there is a serial number on the back that is just invisible. So I need to take a quicker look. The good news is, one, if you have these cards, Sony's going to replace them for free. You just have to give them a call, and they're going to walk you through that process. Also, somebody wrote me this morning, panic. They're about to leave on vacation. They have these cards. Should they not use them? And I said, yes, ideally you shouldn't. But the recall only states that you're going to run into an issue with them if you video record at the speed of the card with a camera that matches that. So the likelihood, if you're a photographer, of triggering a failure on this card is pretty small, but it's there, and they're offering to replace them for free. So I would take advantage of that. I've been using these cards for months. I don't remember when I bought them. And I haven't had any issues, and I do record on them as well at sometimes. So just because it's affected doesn't mean it's automatically going to burst into flames and melt your camera down. But again, you should replace them. Yeah. And then Tanya sent this in or messaged me earlier this week and said, hey, what do you think of this? Let's go check this out. And I tagged Tanya's Instagram in the news article just because I thought it was cool. Anytime you want to, people out there, chat room, or anybody watching, you want to share with me an article that you'd like to get our opinion about, I can't always promise that it's going to get discussed on the show, but if it does, I'm happy to tag you, your Instagram or your Facebook or something like that, in the little news article. So let's take a look at some fake news. Don't we love that term? Here we go. This is on Instagram. Tanya follows PS Creators, Tivers, and it says partly false information reviewed by independent fact checkers. First off, before we click see why and see post, what caught my attention is there's nothing stating what it is here in the caption. There's no like, you're about to see a two-headed pig dog. No. So why is it partly false information? We click see why, and it says, this is not footage from a drone, but rather a digital creation. It's a post is a mix of true and false claims, or it could be misleading or incomplete.
Wow.
And so let's actually see the post. What do you think?
Yeah, it was a little small, at least my screen here. I'm trying to.
So I'll describe it to those listening, to our listening audience. It is what looks like a shot from a very high drone of a cool, snowy, mountainous region. And one of the mountain chains forms basically a sleeping woman. It's very cool looking. Yeah. And it looks, I mean, it looks fake to me in that the way the legs are is like, yes, I know sometimes mountains look similar to human shapes. That's why, you know, every state has like a head on a mountain somewhere that's natural. But, you know, it's not really like I would be like, oh, wow, that's amazing. I'd be like, oh, wow, that's really cool digital art. But my genius aside from my geographic days in college, I still don't think this is trying to mislead anybody because it never states what it is anywhere. And it's on a website called PS Creativers. Do we need Instagram to tag this for us?
No,
not at all. I mean, if you want to critique stuff on Instagram, this is not the thing to critique.
Yes.
There's plenty of garbage out there on Instagram that's far more, I would say, visually offensive and just like artistically offensive. So, yeah.
And it's just, so do we think, I have no idea. Do we think this was an automatic flag that some computer AI picked up, or who said that, oh my gosh, I need to warn people that this isn't really a mountain lady? I don't. So
that's so interesting to me. I don't.
Yeah. And let's just let's go look at this account real quick and see the kind of stuff that they post that you know, so interesting.
That the Statue of Liberty flooded.
Yeah, happened yesterday. All this news going on, it got buried in the news, but there it was. Sharks were surrounding it. Yeah. So I just don't think, I think there can be sites that are independent of fact checking. This is a clearly all of these are gorgeous, by the way. Really, really cool composites.
Yeah, very cool.
I just don't think they need to be fact checked.
Yeah.
No. And in general, I'll say I am on the side of fact checking news and content to a degree. I know that brings up a lot of issues, and we will go into that. But this just seems a little strange to me. So,
well, it's art, you know, and just that the fact that you're taking real elements, real photographs, and blending them together in a way that is clearly not real. It's incredible that we live in a day and age where you can do this so well, but anybody that sees any of this and thinks, I mean, you're not going to look at the Statue of Liberty and think that's real. Like, I mean, it's.
Oh, I don't know. I've got people on my Facebook feed that.
Well, actually, yeah, you might be right.
Oh, Facebook.
Oh gosh, I've got relatives. I will not mention them, and they're probably not watching this show. Where basically any post they make, I'm like, you need to just live on Snopes for about 2 years before you make another post.
Exactly. I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't. And you know, we're seeing this with a lot of forums where, you know, YouTube will take a video down sometimes. That's like, why was that taken down? Or, you know, Facebook or Instagram. And obviously these entities, they're allowed to do that. They are their own companies, but I don't understand it. And especially if it's being driven by some sort of bot. It's really cool that that's possible, but it's also really scary because there will come a point where, you know, with the whole real fake, is that what they call them? Real fakes? Deep fakes, yeah, where, you know, we aren't going to know what's real. And I mean, that's already happening.
It does concern me. And it really does. You know, when you can do these videos and stuff, and all of a sudden you're seeing past presidents saying things that they never said.
Yeah. And then, of course, people will believe it. So, but this is so clearly, you know, otherworldly, and it's not, there's not like some fine line here, you know, like you said, the woman on the mountain, you know, the fact that her feet came together like that so perfectly. I mean, if it was missing a few of those elements, it might be like, wow, that's really cool that this mountain range is shaped that way. But it was so clearly manipulated that way. And I think it was really cool.
You know, I like Teresa Rice has a comment in here, been avoiding Facebook for months now. I alluded to this at the end of last week's show, and I'm by no means preaching that you need to just leave Facebook or social media. But for me, I've really pulled back on it. And I know David Carr, you and I kind of talked about this a little bit, because I did find myself just becoming extremely cynical and very judgmental. And part of it is as innocent as, is this real or not? And then you get a whole rabbit trail of trying to prove that it's real or not, and do I do anything? And then before you know it, you've looked at 20 posts where you're questioning whether something is real or not. And then you go out into the world and you're wondering what exactly is real. And so because of that, for me, I've really pulled back on the social media thing. And as these news stories get more and more light, I find myself just wanting to pull back even more. That's
so
no,
I'm with you.
You know, Teresa, to your point, I'm with you, sister.
Yeah.
Just getting kind of ridiculous.
It is.
In my opinion, I'm very careful to say that, because there's a lot of great things in social media too, and there's a lot of people making a living with social media. Fortunately, I don't feel like I need social media to make my living.
Yeah, I mean, we could go down a serious rabbit hole. I mean, I think, not to pick on the Kardashians, it's not often that we get to talk about the Kardashians on this show, but, you know, I know it's well known that they Photoshop many of their images that they put up of their body.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Those getting fact checked,
right?
I mean, and that is, I think that as someone who has a teenage daughter, I think that is potentially harmful. Seeing a mountain that looks like a lady, that's not harmful. Why
I agree. You're right. That message that's out there, you know, it's amazing too how much of a backlash there has been in recent years when it comes to advertising and even like catalogs for clothing and things like that. Like, we're starting to see more and more plus size models and it's not even plus size. It's like normal people, people. And I love that. And, but yet Instagram is like a breeding ground for all of this fake stuff. So it's just so funny to me that they're going to nitpick on that. So
yeah,
we love to label things, don't we?
Oh yeah, we do.
All the time, plus size model, and you're like, looks like a normal model, or he,
yeah.
Time it's a woman.
It's ridiculous.
I don't know. It's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. We're gonna wrap up here in just a minute. We're gonna skip the. Actually, I never said we were even going to talk about it, so we're not going to worry about that. But we want to talk about Topaz denoise a little bit, because I've been hearing people that I respect talk about it, and downloaded the trial the other day and have been playing with it for a couple of days now, and I'm impressed. So in my article that I sent out to Penn members as a Tuesday tip, you know, I say you're walking a fine balance as you remove noise. As the more noise you remove, the more detail you remove from your image. Typically, most programs, they deal with noise by kind of mushifying and blurring your image a little bit so that the noise gets blurred away. Topaz Denoise AI really seems to do an amazing job of keeping the detail, bringing the detail out while actually removing the noise. I'll show this example here. I think is one of the best examples I've got. On the left is Topaz Denoise run here on Sweeney. He's our bus driver and guide on part of the Yellowstone McKay workshop. And on the right, this was actually Nick noise. It's called Define. That's their noise reducer. The best I could do. Now, I will have a disclaimer. I'm not a Nick expert, so you might be able to work that program a little bit better, but I found it complicated, and this was the best results I could get. I don't know how well this comes through in the stream, but you can
zoom in if you can, Toby.
I can go. So yeah, let's
show his bow tie. That's kind of a dark scene where the skin meets it. There you go.
Yeah.
That's actually with Nick filters on the right.
Yeah, that's with Nick on the right. And which one is? I think this is. Now we got Lightroom. Oops, sorry, Lightroom on the right. The best I could do in Lightroom noise reduction, and Topaz on the left. Now we are in at 3-to-1, so we are zoomed in. But you can clearly see a significant difference at this level. And we back off a little bit. The detail in the mustache remains even with, you know, that, oh, now I switched. Hold on.
Well, yesterday or last night, we were bouncing back and forth offline about this photo example here.
There we go.
It showed me the original file compared to Topaz using the sharpening module and the denoise.
Mm-hmm.
It was truly game changing. I know it takes a long time and stuff, but man, it was almost this paradigm shift that started happening, because I started thinking about a lot of pictures that I've thrown away that have been just slightly blurry or too noisy or whatever. And I am going to be a little lighter on that delete button now, because what Topaz is doing, I know I poo-pooed it a few weeks ago when you first started talking about it because the time and everything, but holy cow, it's incredible with the sharpening and denoise packages that they have.
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly more than just some sliders that manipulate the pixels. It is. I mean, it does take a while to process these things, but you can see why, because of the net effect when you're finished. I mean, it is remarkable.
I think these third-party editing software companies are really making a name for themselves with the AI. You know, I don't know what Adobe has been doing when it comes to the artificial intelligence and stuff, but. And Skylum and Topaz and these other companies, and I'm glad to see it. I want to see the competition get fierce around AI that can be done, because I've started using it for sky replacements in some of my real estate photography, and the Skylum Luminar 4, I think it is, that I use for sky replacements is so easy, and it does such a great job.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And so in the past, you know, I know there's Noise Ninja's been around for a while. Nick has been around for a while, and I've seen examples of it doing better than Lightroom. But in the past, I feel like it's never been better enough for me to add the extra expense and the extra workflow. And I will say both the denoise and the sharpen, especially the sharpen on my Mac, which is a decent Mac. It's getting a little old, but you know, it's a 32 megabytes RAM in there. It's an i7 chip. It hoses this machine. And Steve, when I did the sharpening on your chicken earlier, so the denoise on your chicken earlier, I told you this. It's a large TIFF you sent me, but it was 10 minutes of saving that, and I couldn't really use my machine while I was doing that. So just keep that in mind, people.
It does the same thing to my iMac Pro. It's
okay. That's good to know.
I mean, well, it's not 10 minutes, but it was a good 5 minutes the last time I used it. So.
Okay. Yeah. But that said, I'm going to at least invest in the denoise. The sharpen, I think I probably will as well too. I'm not as sold on that, but the denoise is great. It's a fantastic program, and its sharpening tools within that, I think, is why I can get away without saying I'm definitely investing in the sharpening at first, because it kind of handles both noise and a little additional sharpening all within that one program. I do have a link down below. I was just accepted into their affiliate program, so if you plan to purchase, there's a link in the show notes down below this. I recommend it, even though it does add to your workflow now. It seems to be the best out there.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah. Let's see. We got a couple of Q&As, I think. Let's see if I can remember where I put those. And then we're going to wrap this show up. So let's see what people have asked. No. Oh, I only answered. David, are you using adapted lenses on the Z? You answered that. We're in good shape.
Somebody had a question very early on.
Oh, yeah?
They didn't put Q, they put question. And I figured that we were getting to it. Let me see. I'm just going through the comments.
Brian, did Brian get the name? Oh, yeah, you did. Okay. Brian asked the name of the Instagram feed is. Yeah.
Which bear is best?
Kodiak.
Bears of Instagram. Man, I'm sorry. I can't find it. I think it was a woman that was asking a question, and I made a little note of it, but I don't remember the question.
Well, somebody ask us a question quickly. Just anything.
Yeah.
What's the highest ISO you feel comfortable at from RD? David Carr, you want to answer first?
Okay. So on the Z6, it handles high ISO very well, and I will shoot at 6400 when necessary. If I'm shooting an event, I shoot these graduation events for this company that has like a business program they do, and they're always in low light at this nice restaurant, this steakhouse with low light, and I don't like using flash any more than I have to, and I shoot at ISO 6400, and they turn out great every time. So, but I don't like going beyond there. I just feel like then it really starts to suffer. So.
Yeah. Steve, thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I'm not finding that question. ISO, it totally varies depending on, like, the Hasselblad that I use. I will push that ISO way up there and be fine with that, because the pixels, if you think about it, it's 50 megapixel sensor, but the sensor is 60% larger than a full frame sensor. Those pixels are huge, and they collect so much light that if I even get noise out of them, it can be cleaned up very easily.
Cool.
And one of its biggest strengths, and that's why, you know, I like shooting medium format. It's expensive. We've gone through all of this, but you kind of get what you pay for when it comes to being able to push ISO. And that's important for me with star photography and aurora, being able to use an f4 lens and shoot the aurora and have a totally clean image at 3200 or 6400 ISO. I feel totally confident doing that. I push it to 12.8 before, and it's fine. I need to clean it up, but I got the shot. My Canon, you know, I'm reluctant to go above 6400 with that. I can't really tell you about a time that I have. I'll get up to 3200 sometimes. If I'm shooting stars, I'll push it up there, but then I always have to clean it up a little bit. And that's not bad on Canon. It's just the fact that the sensor is smaller and it just doesn't quite capture light in the same way that the other one does. So for me, it's very camera dependent. That's the short answer, I guess.
Yeah, I 6400 is an easy number for me to throw out as well. You know, if I could stay under that, great. Especially if it's kind of a wildlife shot. I'd love it to be a little bit cleaner than that, but I can go that high. It's in my other catalog, so I don't know. I want to see what my owl shots were. I love those shots. I know they're noisy. I think they're up about 3200 or 4000, and that's with the Sony A7R III. They're getting a little noisy. I'm excited to go back to some of these shots. I went back to my Mount St. Helens night shot from a couple years ago and ran that through the denoise program, and it definitely improves it as well. Great. So, but yeah, I think that's good. And Crystal, I think was the one who said she had the question: what external drive, portable external drive, do we like?
That was I was looking for. So thank you for finding that.
Awesome. And my answer is attached to this machine. I don't know if I can bring it up into the view. I could just the LaCie 2. This is the 2 terabyte. I love an SSD for portable travel because they're small. You don't need to worry about dropping them. Really, they're just sturdy and they're great and they're so fast. So the LaCie 2 terabyte SSD is one of my favorites. If you want to go with a traditional drive, I think the Western Digital My Passports are just a fine, easy spot. You can get like 2 and 4 terabyte drives for $90 to $150. That's awesome.
You were using this for a while, weren't you, Toby?
I was, and I still have that around. Really, the only difference, that's a great one too. The only thing that I like more about the LaCie is it has a little light. And so I know when it's happy and plugged in. And there were times where that SanDisk was slow to mount on my machine. Yeah. And I was like, is it really working? I can't tell. And there's no noise that comes from it. You can't, put your ear to it and see if the disk is spinning as I used to in the old days. Yeah, it's alive in there. Why isn't it showing up on my computer yet?
Right. So that's true. I've noticed that. But I was walking around with, I was traveling with this for a long time. And then I went to this. So it's like.
Things are huge, but you go anywhere with this and
it's a great drive. Yeah.
This is also LaCie. I'm sure most of you have seen this. But what I found with external drives, any external drive, if it's the one I use here at my desk or if I travel with it, is the throughput is what I find to be the biggest factor for me. So I use a Mac, and I would not buy anything without a Thunderbolt 3 port. Right. Or, USB-C is similar. Thunderbolt 3 is actually, I think, proven to be a little faster. But that throughput really helps
speed
up your editing and stuff like that. Because you can have a USB external drive, which is great for storage and stuff, but if you're pulling from that to do your edits and everything, it can get choked up in that throughput pretty quickly. And the length of the cable also matters. So especially when
good point.
If you try to get a long Thunderbolt cable, it's going to run you a fortune.
Yeah, good point. Which, teaser for next week, I've made my computer decision and it will be here in time for the show next week.
Nice.
And I think you're going to be surprised. I hope I'm not surprised negatively by what I chose.
Dude, you're getting a Dell.
So we'll talk next week. Guys, thank you so much. Steve, you can follow Steve at Scurich on Instagram, and his Facebook links are right down below the show. Thanks for joining us today, Steve.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having us in your living room or wherever you are.
And David Carr, you can follow David Carr _photo on Instagram as well, and go watch his latest How I Edit video. I need to watch that. I need to go back and watch the Ring one too, because you do some Photoshop magic in that. I'm excited to see how all that came together. And just a reminder, folks, tomorrow evening, episode 4 of the Creative Lounge, 6 p.m. That's going to be awesome with Terrell Lloyd, a San Francisco 49ers photographer. So I'm excited for that. Everybody, thank you so much. If you haven't already, give the show a quick thumbs up. And if you're not a subscriber, hit that subscribe button. And if you're not a pen member, you could consider joining photorec.tv/pen. Tons of awesome content there. Chat room, thank you. You make this show so much better. Bye-bye, everybody. Till next week.
See you guys.